Welcome back to my series ranking every Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring boss. We're in that juicy 10 out of 10 range with 40 bosses left, meaning these are the bosses that I think are flawless or nearly flawless. Maybe they're not all perfect, but they're transcendently good in some way as to make it here, at least in my mind. This is gonna have some controversial takes in this episode, and this is my video, so what I say goes. If I wanted to put Pinwheel as number one, you guys would have to sit there and take it. Number 40, Sir Elon. So as I said, we're in that 10 out of 10 range, but I gotta be honest. A 10 out of 10 in Dark Souls 2 might not be the equivalent to a 10 out of 10 in other games like Sekiro. On pure mechanical merits, Elon is not near the level of something like Genichiro, who placed a little bit lower. But I have to give credit for making such a fantastic boss in a game where the combat can feel sluggish. Elon stands honorably above his Dark Souls 2 peers as they've timed his swipes and dashes perfectly to match the player's speed. Add on top of that his sick visual design, the ever talked about perfectly clean floor, the stunning sunset backdrop, the bombastic and somber score, and you have a boss that is clearly in the top tier of FromSoft's catalog. Seriously, this track is miles better than every other Dark Souls 2 track outside of Majula's theme, like a precursor to the Dark Souls 3 main theme. The runback is still dog ass. The hitboxes can do you dirty, but if you ADP your way past those complaints, then you're gonna absolutely adore this boss. There's even a little tidbit, a little morsel of bragging rights for anyone who beats this boss without taking damage. The boss will commit Sudoku with shame after having been outmatched so hilariously. An awesome character and world building detail that rewards mastery, something that I think FromSoft should explore more. Number 39, Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. Gwyn is cool. He is overrated, Yeah, I know a lot of you have a nostalgic obsession with the Fallen King, and understandably so. For those of you who began your Souls journey with the Lord of Cinder, there likely won't ever be a moment as profound as finding the god of legends reduced to a shell, swiping away frantically with a flaming sword, casting shadows amongst the dimly lit cave. The music is a somber backdrop to a somber ending of an epic tale. There's a reason I give him a 10 out of 10, but I do gotta say, the fight on a mechanical front is questionable. For those who can and do parry, the boss has become a complete and utter joke, and for those who don't or can't, the boss is an unrelenting R1 spammer. When I compare Gwyn to the 4 Dark Souls 1 bosses that managed to squeeze their way above him, I can see a clear mechanical divide. I rarely, if ever, can get a heal off, and his aggression is relentless in a way that feels a bit off in the speed of Dark Souls 1. There isn't a huge variety to his attacks, and the battle feels more like a storytelling set piece at times rather than an amazing boss. However, with every variable considered, I still think he deserves a seat at the table of 10s, but maybe he needs a tiny booster seat. Number 38, Black Dragon Calamite. Speaking of Dark Souls 1, damn, this is an awesome setup. There are few bosses who have a preceding cutscene to set the stage for your epic battle, of course Radahn being one of the best. In this situation, you've likely wandered into Calamite's lair and been met with the fastest barbecue in the West, but now you approach Go and witness the shot heard around the world. Man, I love that guy. After Go weakens Calamite, you can battle. And as the first dragon boss of the entire Dark Souls saga, it does not disappoint. Because he's weakened, he can't spend the entirety of the fight in the air, a chief complaint for some of the weaker dragon fights. But he still retains some aerial capabilities. His design is dark and corrupted, and the black flame triggers my primal instinct. While it's not as fluid or epic as something like Midir from the later games, it set the gold standard for dragon battles and is a challenging boss in Dark Souls 1, not a common achievement. The DLC of Dark Souls 1 is where the best of the fights all are, and Calamite is no exception. Number 37, Radagon of the Golden Order. Initially, this boss placed lower, but I was neglecting some of the context of the battle. First of all, I legitimately got chills the first time I saw the cutscene and heard the opening theme reprised and remixed in all of its glory. It felt like a FromSoft battle of the ages. The soundtrack alone is enough to make this a classic, but the battle itself is simultaneously chilling and bombastic as well. My only complaint, and the reason why I placed this boss lower before, is the huge amount of delayed AoEs. They can be somewhat frustrating to play around, and I know they're there for summons, but I don't use summons. I'd prefer if there were more fun combos and less AoEs, but literally every other aspect of the fight is fun, engaging, and intense. I always look forward to the final stretch of Elden Ring, as it's a boss rush of a bunch of amazing encounters, and Radagon is clearly one of the greats. Also, as for why I split this encounter, despite the fact that you have to beat Radagon and Elden Beast to continue, simply put, I think the bosses are both completely fleshed out in their own right and deserve separate consideration. Also, it's my list, so I make the rules. With a bombastic score cheering you to victory, a visually compelling arena, grandiose attacks, and exciting moveset, Radagon is clearly a fantastic boss, but somehow, even with all of this praise, he is still listed at 12 out of 33 in Elden Ring. How is that even possible? Well, there are a ton of bosses in Elden Ring that, while they might not be absolutely flawless in every single way, provide what Radagon does and more. You'll see, I'll convert you to my side. Number 36, True Corrupted Monk. Back to Shinobis and Ninjas, we have one of the coolest looking fights of Sekiro. The monk enters in the typical bridge surprise fashion, jumping out of nowhere to block your path to destiny. She's creepy yet beautiful, dancing with her unbelievably long blade. Every deflect must be timed to perfection with her long and calculated combos. She conjures imagery of the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, corrupted yet elegant. The first phase is essentially the false monk, but with a less intensive posture bar. The dance with the monk is perhaps the most enjoyable deflect fest of Sekiro, and that's saying something for a game full of waltz after waltz. After phase 1 is where my only complaint is. I wish there was something more interactive about phase 2, as I end up sitting on a tree branch like a squirrel and getting a free stealth blow on the monk every time. Phase 3 is also great though, as we get a huge twist on her typical design with the disgusting centipede creature bursting out of her skull. Ew. We still have the classic dance-like moves of the monk, but with terror barf thrown in to keep you in check with attack spams. This means you have to be ready to sidestep at any time, making the fight engaging and delightful. As I said, if phase 2 was adjusted slightly, this would be an even better fight, but as it is, it's still one of the most satisfying battles visually and mechanically of the entire series. Number 35, Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. According to my calculations, Renala is the best pure mage of the series. To be fair, some of her competition are about as good as the magician you'd hire for a 12-year-old's birthday party, but hey, she's still number 1. She feels like a refinement of their puzzle boss style in the first phase. There isn't anything challenging or too engaging about the first half, but I will say I think they're hitting home on a somber and somewhat creepy or disturbing atmosphere. I definitely felt it when the zombie child almost bit my toes like a freaky crab. Anyways, I was completely enthralled by the visual storytelling of the battle, and that is kicked up to 11 during the phase transition. Ranni steps in to defend her mother, and in doing so we get one of the most awe-inspiring visual spectacles of the series. The mechanics are on point, balanced and fair, albeit slightly easy. There are dragon summons, huge glittering magic blasts, and an arena to die for. Literally, I died on my first playthrough, on purpose, just so I could do it all again. The music is there, the balance of magic and summons and melee attacks are there, the atmosphere is there, I mean, it has it all. I think this fight is somewhat underrated due to its placement in the early game, but look at it seriously and tell me this isn't the pinnacle of mage battles. Number 34, Guardian Ape. In terms of a fight loaded to the brim with crazy and wacky ideas, Guardian Ape might just take the cake. The monkey literally farts on you and then grabs a piece of poop from its butt and throws it at you and then scratches its own butt. In all seriousness, there's a sense of dignity in the preceding battles of Sekiro. Up until this point, you face generals and warriors led by a sense of honor and humanity. Sekiro has been a balanced and timed rhythm game with predictable yet satisfying strings of combat. This ape takes a fat dump on everything you thought you knew, literally and figuratively, engaging in rapid, manic, erratic attacks that feel so far removed from the world of Shinobi that you have to relearn the game and how to approach it. It flips the game completely on its head and sent me into a panicked frenzy every time. The sheer adrenaline of the fight was enough to land it high on the list, but thank God it's only one phase or it would have just been too much to handle. So anyways, as I was saying, Guardian Ape is a really good what's going on? What the Yeah, phase 2 is somehow even better, featuring a disgusting, off-putting version of the honorable swordplay from the rest of the game. The headless ape holds its own head as it writhes, puppeted by the centipede inhabiting it. I think this phase alone is worth the price of admission into Sekiro, and my only reason for lowering it somewhat is that the extreme randomness of the first phase can be a bit much at times. Other than that, can't say this fight is anything but perfect. Number 33, Dragon Slayer Armor. I think I've noticed over the years that there are certain visual triggers that make people automatically dismiss some bosses. A perfect example of this is Lawrence from Bloodborne. They see Cleric Beast on fire and think, damn, this is a derivative boss, despite the fact that there is practically hardly anything overlapping between the Cleric Beast battle and the battle with Father Lawrence. Similarly here, we have Dragonslayer Armor, a completely distinct and unique battle atop a grand bridge near the end of the game of Dark Souls 3. Complete with flying, flaming butterfly craziness making you bring your happy feet. The shield forces you to play a little bit differently, and he even attacks with it, surprising many a Souls vets who are used to purely cosmetic shieldage. But because he has a visual design somewhat reminiscent of Ornstein, this boss is easily forgotten. Without as compelling lore significance and less distinct visual design, people quickly lose interest. I think this is definitely a boss worth reassessing with a clear mind, as it does just about everything right, from the fake stagger transition of Phase 2, gorgeous visuals, and fast-paced nuts to butts action. Super underrated. Number 32, Fume Knight. And we've finally reached it, the definitively best boss of Dark Souls 2, in my book. And it's only 32nd in the series. This boss has absolutely everything the best bosses of the series have. We've got unrelenting aggression, distinct phases, a deep moveset, intriguing lore, and a sick visual design. I love the varying speeds of his two different swords in Phase 1 and how the big sweeps require you to dodge in specific directions. That reminds me of the cake follow-up damage on Slave Knight Gale, and anything that reminds me of Gale is a positive. We are a Gale household here on the Nightwalk YouTube channel. One of my favorite details of the entire encounter is that if you enter the arena wearing Velstat's armor, you will instantly trigger Phase 2, which gives so much more character to Raim. He is so pissed off, and I love that. Specifically too, his greatsword is one of my favorite weapons of the entire series. I've done many runs using the Fume Ultra Greatsword, even dual wielding it at times. One detail I haven't heard a lot of people mention is his entrance. His sword is sitting in the snow, beckoning you forward like Excalibur, daring you to meet his challenge. He conjures blackened fog, contrasted beautifully by the glistening blue snow, and rises like a phoenix from ashes to meet you in battle. Something about it is so satisfying that every time I fight him, I get a huge kick of dopamine right before the fight, which might aid in his placement just a little bit. Number 31, Owl Father. Yeah, this is a plot twist nobody expected, I'm sure. Most of you expect Owl in the top 10 at least, and maybe even top 1. So let me explain before you all get butthurt. So how could I possibly place Owl at 31st? Keep in mind that 31st is still a 10 out of 10 fantastic boss, but yes, I don't think he matches the top 10 of the series because I simply found him unbelievably easy. I know that for most people, they probably don't have the same experience, but this is my experience. I have fought him twice, and I have never died to him. Perhaps this is because I learned the Great Shinobi Owl fight to the point where I could flawless it blindfolded, but when I finally got to the real deal, he didn't manage to pose much of a threat. The footage you're watching is my first ever battle with Gramps, and despite my clunky fight, I managed to best him. So let's talk difficulty. Is it the be-all end-all for quality? No, absolutely not. But the battle's difficulty should match the lore, the characters, and the stage of the game you're in. For example, I don't mind that Renala is on the easy side, as she is an early game mage, and is made to build an exceptional atmosphere. Owl Father, on the other hand, is designed to be the pinnacle of challenge, the heightened version of Great Shinobi Owl, and the Lawrence to our Cleric Beast. He is harder than the Great Shinobi Owl, but I had a lot of hype around this boss as everyone was talking about him, and many put him as the best and hardest of the game. When I was not able to have a learning experience, grinding and appreciating the intricacies of the boss over time, and didn't have that glorious sense of achievement after getting victory, I left somewhat disappointed. I have since faced him only one more time, just because unlocking him is so difficult, and still beat him, but discovered a newfound appreciation. There is so much to love here, and I know he's not been so easy for others, so I'm sure for you guys you place him higher. With time, he's aged well, and his Spirit Owl adds so much complexity to the fight, a lovely twist on the sword combat of Sekiro. I do adore this battle, but I don't have the primal connection to it that many of you do, simply because the battle is locked behind so much frustrating dialogue and was so underwhelming on the difficulty front on my first fight. It's still a masterpiece. Number 30, Ornstein and Smo. This guy's out of his mind! From one controversial pick to another, we have ONS landing just inside of the top 30, out of 162 bosses. No doubt, this is one of the most iconic bosses of the series, and particularly for people who started Dark Souls 1, the first major roadblock. It pioneered so many crucial ideas, like multi-enemy boss fights with differing speeds, in rooms with crowd control, player-controlled phase 2s, and awesome intro cutscenes. So why are these guys at 30? I think I have to emphasize again that 30 is still a 10 out of 10 to me, and I love these guys. Like seriously, I'd have a beer with them. I just think there are other multi-enemy boss fights that are better, more engaging, and more challenging. There are times when I'm fighting ONS where I feel like it's way too easy as a veteran of the series. However, on subsequent playthroughs, I have struggled with them sometimes, and that's because it can be hard to find safe openings to attack from time to time. I think their difficulty is just about right, but it can be inconsistent due to the multiple enemies. Essentially, they're Omega Beast Mode awesome sauce, but there are some better multi-enemy bosses. As for what they do absolutely right, the build-up and soundtrack are awesome places to start. There's something immensely satisfying about this battle, more so than just about any in the game. It feels like it was made in a different era than fights like Centipede Demon and Capra Demon. Like seriously, this was made by the same people at the same time? It's just so many miles ahead of everything else in the base game, and it's not even close. The arena and preceding area are glorious and have such a different regal energy than everything else in the game and even series. I think the varied speed and aggression works flawlessly and blah 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 blah. I'm sure you guys already know that ONS rock. Just had to say that they're definitely not in my top 10, though I can see why they would be for others. Number 29, Manus, Father of the Abyss. Speaking of bosses that feel like out of another game, Manus is an absolute menace. He has so many more attacks, so many more abilities, and so much more challenge than any other boss in the game, and it's not even close. He feels like he's out of Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne with his huge combos and massive damage, and even in his creature design. He's like a demo for the design of Cleric Beast, but with a more ominous and challenging moveset, and it's truly glorious facing him. He's even got the extra big hand. He has a 5-hit combo a la Soul of Cinder, a sick arena and lore, and tosses in spells for good measure. I'm not sure why people seem to sleep on Manus sometimes, but I see him ranked relatively lowly sometimes. Maybe it's because he feels a little out of place in this game with his level of combos and difficulty, but I feel like it actually fits really well, and I love this guy. Number 28, Hoarah / Godfrey First Elden Lord. The First Elden Lord is perhaps the only adversary on your journey through Elden Ring who truly seems to respect you. He exudes regality and honor as he steps to face you, with the horns and triumphant choir swelling underneath his powerful stomps. In terms of late game Elden Ring, Godfrey is probably the most balanced classic Souls fight. He has imposing, long, fluid combos that leave openings for punishment and does reasonable damage. There aren't cheap gimmicks or tricks to throw the player off, just good old-fashioned axe versus sword action, and I can't get enough of it. Then Godfrey decides, F this regality stuff, I'm gonna tear out your heart and eat it for fun. And I'm hardly exaggerating. This guy demolished me over and over again with his bare hands. Yeah, it might have not been my favorite part of the game. I don't particularly enjoy losing control of my character 6 times in a row while I'm simply trying to heal. And it's one of the few times I got frustrated at the game. To be fair, that's mostly my fault, but still, the punishment wasn't enjoyable when I find myself as a spectator of my own demise. With that said, I applaud the ambition in subverting our expectations to where this fight would go, and the sheer brutality of it all. I do love it, but it's somewhat of a love-hate relationship at times. Number 27, Godric the Grafted. Oh my god, the voice acting on this boy gives me chills. If this doesn't just vomit pure insanity, grasping desperately to the vestiges of unattainable power, I don't know what does. Godric is a little bit easy for the point in the game that you face him, considering he comes after Margit. I understand the lore purpose of his lower difficulty from Margit, but if his difficulty was raised just a little bit, maybe even if he was placed in the late game, I think he would skyrocket in most people's rankings. Everything in this fight is perfect, from the setup, the arena, the music. Wow, the soundtrack of this fight is unbelievable. Sounds like the collapsing of an entire civilization, as I've seen in the comments of the official audio. If only his delays were a little bit less extreme, we might find more of a challenge here, but with all of that said, he's still one of my absolute favorites of the entire series and a great introductory boss. Perhaps should have been the first boss of the game. Number 26, Elden Beast. Alright, let's talk Elden Beast. I've already litigated the Great Elden Beast divide on this channel before, a few times in my responding to comments video and in our ranking of the top 20 best bosses of Elden Ring. I'll just say this at the outset, this boss will not be for everyone. I know many of you think it's atrocious, and I do somewhat see why. there can be a cacophony of hard-to-read spells all casted simultaneously, making the fight an incoherent mess. That does happen from time to time. However, I think a lot of the complaints are extremely overblown. Starting with the fact that the Elden Beast is always running away, worst boss of all time. Well, no, in this fight it took me about 3 minutes to kill Elden Beast in NG+, and the max amount of time I was not hitting the beast at any given moment was around 20 seconds. But I don't want to go through every negative point. Let me just say why I love this fight. First is the atmosphere. There has been nothing like it before, and nothing again will match it. Final bosses are always supposed to be about this in Souls, at least in my mind. From Gehrman to Soul of Cinder and Gwyn, and I think this is the most distinct of all, embodying the astral and the foreign. I legitimately was overflowing with a sense of awe upon my initial bouts, and it swelled to chills by the end. The score is perhaps my favorite of the entire series at this point. A journey-defining soundtrack. The fact that the beast does reposition regularly allows for the entire depth of cinematic mastery to truly be taken in by the player, and I would absolutely prefer this to the ankle chipping of previous games. I love the strange variety of cinematically stunning attacks, and I simply fell in love with this fight. Sure, it's the second half of a fight, so it's hard to give it the props of some to come, and Elden Stars can be frustrating, but in every single other way, I adore this battle. Now keep it civil down below, but let me know your thoughts. That's all for this video, and we'll be back. There's only 2 more videos in the series, so be sure to subscribe and like the video so you don't miss anything. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a great day. Peace.